All right. Sweet. Thanks for doing this.
Cool. Yeah.
So I guess just to start, would you mind giving like just a brief description of your role within the industry and then at Royal Coffee? I know everyone can look up your bio on the website, but just to hear it from you and get a better understanding and kind of just how it all led up to where you're at now too, if you don't mind.
Totally. Yeah. So right now, I'm a coffee trader for Royal Coffee New York. Basically, that's a dual role that I play. So I buy green coffee from producers from all around the world, and then I sell green coffee to roasters all around the eastern half of the U.S. Royal Coffee New York is underneath the Royal Coffee umbrella. So we actually have a sister company in California that started before us, I believe back in 78 or 79. So when Royal was founded in 1994, Jamie, the founder, who has family, who I believe is Bob Fulmer, is his family or family friend, something like that. And if you don't mind just fact checking me there, he basically wanted to be he wanted to use the Royal name, and he wanted to be a part of that whole identity. And so basically Royal Coffee New York and Royal Coffee California work mostly as one. We just share a lot of contracts and a lot of suppliers, but we carry separate inventories and obviously are on opposite sides of the country. So that's where I'm at now.
Cool.
And it's awesome. It's great.
How did you get involved with Royal?
Yeah, so I knew about Royal for a really long time. You know, I started in coffee back in 2000. God, it feels like 1901, but it was 2012. And when I started working in coffee, I remember seeing the Royal logos around the roastery, and even like just going to local shops. Like when I lived in Asbury Park in the early 2000s, like going to a few different shops here and there and seeing kind of like a Royal crown on a bag, or just kind of like Google searching like green coffee or something like that. I would see Royal. And the longer I was in the industry, I had these really cool opportunities to do more things, like go to Coffee Fest in New York, probably in like 2014 or something like that. And Royal had a booth there, and I just remember like walking around and kind of trying coffee from everywhere, but like the Royal people were just like super friendly. And so it always kind of like stuck out to me that like Royal was a cool place, and that like the people there were genuine, and the name always just kind of stayed in my mind. So over the years when I was working throughout the I guess to say ladder, if you want to say it that way, at a roastery and doing on e-commerce and stuff like that, over the years, as I kind of started to think about being part of the green coffee world, Royal was a name that always kind of just like stayed with me. And I always kind of thought it was a place I'd want to be. When it finally came time to leave the roasting world and work for a green coffee company, I knew that I was leaving something I was really comfortable with. But I knew that I had a lot to learn. So when I first left, I worked for a really small green importer, and I kind of, took my lashings there in a way, because I knew nothing. So I was like learning on the fly, and I was doing everything. And once I kind of thought that I gained enough of an understanding, or I would be able to like hold my own, or at least like have a conversation with the Royal people in like a real way, I took a leap and I applied here, and that was it.
Yeah, so that was basically like your warm up before you really got involved with Royal.
Exactly. Yeah, it was I come from working on the roasting side of things. So like, I mean, because you're there now, and I'm sure a lot of people that'll listen to this or view this or like in a similar boat, like you do a lot of stuff yourself. Like it is a very much like a DIY culture, and you wear a lot of hats, and that's just like the nature of the beast. And when I left the roasting side and I went to that really small company, it was like that times like 10 for me, at least. It was as if I were starting a green coffee business myself. Because I mean, the people I worked for had like, they had no roots in the US. They were an Australian company. And I learned everything like on the fly and just through like, talking to people and meeting people along the way that I was like buying coffee from, like asking a ton of questions. And, it was really stressful at the time, but it actually worked out really, really well because it was kind of that like, you know, giant leap into the abyss and a huge learning experience.
Yeah, it was interesting for me, at least when I first really got involved with coffee and took over Maiden, to see like how many different parts there are to the whole like coffee supply chain. And how when you first get into it, you imagine that every single coffee shop just is also a roastery and then a green coffee importer, and you realize just how many different parts there are to the entire process. So, so yeah, I mean, I guess since you started in 2012, has there been anything that you've seen that has changed at all? Is it like pretty similar to what it was like when you first started? Do you think that there's anything that just kind of sticks out to you when you think back to when you first got involved with coffee?
Oh man, so much, so much, both like with myself and just like with the industry and like what I know the industry to be, because the industry is something different to everybody, and there's kind of like there's new stuff all the time. I think that one of the major things is that there are a lot of roasters out there now. When I first started in the coffee world, it was like I knew like two roasters. I knew a bunch of coffee shops, and like a lot of them like played like huge roles in like why I wanted to pursue coffee. But I remember like going to Coffee Fest, for instance, and it was a pretty small event. It was like there was nothing to really report from going there for me, at least. It was a small room. Seemed like there was like 200 people there max, and a lot of it were like small roasters or like importers like Royal, like I mentioned earlier. And over the years, it seems like there's a new roastery like every day, which is really cool because it's like, I grew up like skateboarding, and I kind of related a lot to skateboarding. There's like a million skateboard companies now, but like every single one has a voice. Like every one hits a different mark and satisfies a different audience. And I just think it's like really cool to watch. It's really, really cool to like, be a part of and just kind of like observe.
Yeah, it seems like there's almost like a roaster bubble that's forming just because of how many different roasteries are popping up, and a lot of them are just at home roasters too. But it's pretty interesting to see. It's like how many different ways can you accomplish the same task in a way.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, with coffee now too, like one of the things that's definitely changed is that like, starting out, it was like, there was a coffee and like a country that it was from. So like, let's just say like Honduras, right? And you'd look at somebody's menu and it would just say like Honduras, medium roast, right? And nowadays, like you look around and it's like you see a different name everywhere you go. So like the traceability is increased like tenfold. So it's really cool because it's like, like I said, there's like a million different companies that satisfy a million different audiences. And there's kind of like a coffee and a story that fits every one of those companies, and that they have the ability to talk about and like, build a relationship with the farmer, hopefully. And like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how big the market is and how a lot of people still don't really understand just how many different places are exporting coffee. And it's interesting too to see just how roasteries are marketing or coffee shops are marketing to kind of like distinguish themselves, because like you said, there's so many different ways or so many different types of traceability nowadays that it's like which method do you choose to set yourself apart from the competition, or just make your product unique?
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's like, it's kind of like business. It's in a way, it's kind of like business 101, right? Because like in a business, like what you're trying to really do is like identify like a problem that you see and provide a solution in a way. And like, to that exact point, it's like, a lot of people identify all these different issues, right? So it's like women's rights. Okay, cool. So there's coffee solely produced by women for that audience to provide a solution to that problem. It's like, fair pricing for farmers. Like, okay, rad. There's an opportunity for you to provide your customers and solve that problem by only purchasing fair trade or direct trade coffees. It's like, it's a pretty cool thing to kind of just see all these people find ways to like tell that story or tell the story that like best suits the solution to their problem.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think that's another question that I wanted to ask you that just comes to mind when you say that. I guess there's so many different types of certifications within coffee. It's like you kind of get lost when you're at a supermarket.
Yep.
Do you think that that's going to fade away? Do you think that certifications like regenerative organic certification is going to basically eliminate all of these different types of certifications, like bird friendly, Rainforest Alliance, organic, sustainability? It's like that sort of seems like it's the next wave of certifications that looks to encompass all of those, even fair trade too.
Yeah, I mean, I say yeah, but the yeah is not, it's going to fade away. It's just like an acknowledgement. I want that on record. But I think that it's, it's really an interesting thing with the amount of certifications that are out there. And I think that it is to your point, kind of like the next step in things, in that like, okay, everybody now has coffees on their menu with farmer names. Everybody is telling a different story about these things. And like, everybody is trying to, again, to your point, to do something a little bit different. So like certifications allow you to do that, because now it's like, okay, cool. Well, like, this one person has this one coffee from this farmer in Colombia, but I have this coffee from their neighbor that's rock certified or something like that. And that's regenerative organic certification is rock.
Right.
But, I think that the certifications are not gonna fade away per se. Like, I don't think that things are gonna revert all the way back to the point of just being like uncertified conventional lots, like 100%. But I think that, like, personally speaking, some are gonna evolve and become more prominent in the industry, and then some may fade off. And which ones are going to become more prominent and which ones are going to fade off are like, a total mystery to me. But I mean, I hope that, whatever the certification or however long it's around for, like, my hopes are really that it helps, support the cause that certification says it's here to support. Right. Like, I really, like, I would hope that something, if they're saying it's regenerative, and that it's going to be like beneficial to like the soil and allow farmers to like, extend the life or lifespan of their farm, then like, cool. Like, I really hope it does that.
Yeah, that's like the challenging part.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens sometimes, and it's not like always, but like sometimes, what people will see this name, right? It's like, okay, organic, right? Everybody wants organic. Okay, my farm is totally organic, but like some farms, like, they don't operate that way, just because there's like a lot of pests, or there's like a lot of like problems with the soil or something like that. And it's like sometimes you need a fertilizer that can really help. And kind of like give the plant something to like, better produce. And I'm not saying it's like, go ahead and use like Miracle Grow or something like that. But sometimes there's something that's like, isn't certified, that really would help somebody. And if that's the case, then as long as it's like not like, of course, harmful or anything like that, it's like, by all means, like, a lot of these people that are growing coffee really don't have that much. And if they're producing like a container of coffee, which is like, that's a lot for a single farm in a lot of cases, but like they're able to produce like a good amount of coffee, like by all means do it, because there's a market for it. It's like they'll get paid somehow.
Yeah, I think it's just a reality for some farms that in order to get that organic certification or the ROC certification,
Definitely.
like the amount of resources that you need to get to that point, it's almost impossible unless you have like the funding from an importer or a roastery. I would imagine.
Or even like, sorry to cut you off.
No,
like
no.
even like, to your point of having resources, it's like you have to have like the ability to go to a bank, right? And like really tell them, okay, I'm going to become an organic farm and I need X amount of capital in order to do that. Here's how much the certification costs, here's how much the organic fertilizers cost, here's when we'll start to be able to make money to pay you back, kind of thing. And along with that, there's a lot of paperwork. There's randomized audits that happen too, where somebody will just go to the farm and check it out, and see if everything is actually organic. And these people can potentially become decertified if they're not properly following the quote unquote rules, which can be vague sometimes and confusing to some people. And it's like, if they have contracts written up with importers like myself that state that they're selling an organic coffee and then they get decertified or they run into an issue, it's like then I have an issue and I can't bring that coffee in under that certification.
Yeah. I mean, even that,
so it's tricky.
Right. I mean, it's almost like you have to do a cost like analysis of whether it's worth taking all those steps, getting the organic certification. And I know I said resources before, and that's like basically a buzzword nowadays. And the market, it's like
it's a fair buzzword.
Right. It's like all you really need to do is just give them more money at the end of the day. Like, what is resource? Yeah, people too.
For the paperwork that understand the paperwork, have done it before, and really like have the ability to make sure that everything is like organized correctly, filled out correctly, and all the information is like clear as day, and that farmer understands exactly what's expected of them to be able to maintain whatever the certification, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess could you provide everyone with like a second grade description of what the C market is? Like, is it like coffee futures? How does it work? Why is it important? How has it moved? Like, what news has really moved the needle 10 years ago compared to now? And I know we talked a little bit about that before, but I think it'd be pretty valuable if you could just kind of go over it again.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll start by saying the C market is utterly confusing to anybody who's just looking at it for the first time. Personally, I really like this website called barchart.com. And on that website, all you need is the coffee symbol. So in this case, we're in the December contract. So you can look it up yourselves. And I highly suggest for anyone that listens to do so. The symbol for December is KCZ24. You can go on there and you'll read up on any news that's going on with the market itself. Now, take it with a grain of salt because it's not providing 100% clarity. It gives like a very much so like farm and climate driven response to what's going on, but it's really helpful just to give yourself like a little bit of a why behind, if the market goes up or market goes down. Basically, the C market is what a lot of coffee's prices are structured off of. The C market is the actual value for green coffee. And so with that, it's traded on the New York stock market, and it goes up and down all throughout any given day. And, that's why sometimes, you'll hear these reports of, farmers not being paid enough, or farmers, just not making like livable wages or something like that. And a lot of it has to, it comes down to like the C market. When the C market was trading like 90 cents, right? It's like you saw a lot of farmers get abandoned. You see a lot of people saying, there's no way I can make enough money. And in today's world, the C market is trading in like the $2.50 range for the December contract that we're in. That basically means that at the base level, the coffee is worth $2.50. And so basically for my purpose and like what I do, when I buy coffee, I'm taking that C market and adding the differential that the producer is selling me that coffee for to the market.
Hmm.
So if the market is at 250 and I'm being sold a coffee at C plus 50 cents, then that coffee now is $3. That's how the price gets figured out. And then of course on my side, I have to factor in how much it costs me to get it from point A to point B and all that stuff. But at the very base level, it's the C market plus 50 cents. And that's what a lot of producers do in order to sell us coffee and in order to sell coffee to the trade in general, not even just me. And so basically with that, they have to be somewhat not connected, but to use your famous buzzword of resources, they
Hmm.
have to have the resources available to them to be able to have somebody that's able to manage their contracts. They may have 10 coffees that they're shipping that harvest cycle, but they may be selling one against the December contract, two against the March contract, and then whatever. And if they're not able to manage their books, or they're not able to be within like cell service or something like that to get like a fixation when the market rally means the market goes up, then they may land in a spot where it's coming time for to ship that coffee and we need to fix that contract, and they may still get a good fixation at 250, but the market 4 hours ago may have been at like 254. So
Right.
having somebody that's like really on their side and really like working with them to be able to make that call is super, super helpful. And so a lot of times, for us, as far as the C market goes, I mean, I don't decide anybody's price. Like I don't tell anybody, the market's at 250 and 255, 260, anything like that. But if I know that it's rallying, I mean, I definitely stay in contact with the people that I work with. And, I may ask them like, hey, you have like 6 contracts that are unfixed right now. And, we may have, a record high day, which I mean, who knows, but may have like a record high day, let's say like $3 or something like that. I'll be like, hey, you know what? You have like 6 contracts open right now. Do you need me to do anything? Like, do you need like my help at all?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, like, okay, well, you let me know what you want to do, and we'll make it work on this side. And once we do that, we're basically establishing the price for that supplier, for that exporter, for that producer at that point in time. Well, I'm never deciding the price for them. I'm never telling them, this is all that I'll pay, or, I'm going to haggle, nickel and dime you, or like haggle you down, like ever.
Hmm.
But what does happen is if, I'm buying a coffee again at 50 cents and the market's at 254 and a producer calls to fix their contract, then they're getting paid 304 at that point because it's C plus 50 cents. So
Right. And does
I,
it
I hope I
Royal?
hope that kind of explains like somewhat in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think so. I think from what I'm getting, if I could even dumb it down even more, essentially there's just a base price for all coffee. It has to cost at least this amount. And the C market is essentially the stock ticker prices setting that price on a daily basis. And then usually farms are adding about 50 cents to their product, I imagine, depending on quality, which has like the highest leverage impact on their price, um, to basically make a profit or just keep the lights on at their farm. Um, and you guys act as like the bridge between the farm and the roasters that are buying that coffee. Um, and also Royal, I mean, you guys have the ability to basically change contracts on a daily basis, right?
How do you mean change?
Like if the market rallies one day, right? If you go back to a farm and you can edit that contract that you have set with them. Like let's say last week it was $2.70, right? And then this week it's $2.50. Or well, yeah, I mean, I guess what would that look like? Let's say if that was the scenario.
Well, we can't edit the contracts once they're fixed.
Okay.
And just to go back, so there's the C market provides like a stabilized zone and value for a coffee at its very, very base level, like you said. Some people, if they're, let's use like Brazil as an example, right? Because they export so much coffee in like incredible volumes and really control the market in normal ways. They're able to sell below the C. So they'll say, we'll sell it to you at C at a negative differential, right? And so it'll be C like plus -10 or something like that, just because they have so much coffee that they're willing to take a little bit of a price cut because they'll make it up by way of volume. Because the C fluctuates all throughout the day, which I don't know if I mentioned that before. So it fluctuates every second of the day from, I think, like 4 a.m. up until 1:30 in the afternoon. It moves constantly.
Well, it's like a stock
So
price.
Yeah, exactly. So at any point in time, a producer, supplier, exporter can call us to fix their contract. Once that contract is fixed, that's it. So we can't go back and edit it, because once that contract is fixed against the C using that fixation basis, that's basically the price that we're paying, because we're basically exchanging contracts at that point, or trading contracts, if you will. So we're saying, okay, we have a contract at 250. It's now yours. So now it's the contract for 250 for you to cash out, and then your 50-cent differential is being paid to you by us as well.
Right.
So once that happens, we're not able to go back and then say later on, like, oh, the C is at 270. We'll edit your contract. That contract is already taken care of. The same way as if you go to a farmer's market this weekend and you pay, I'm going to use this example because I've been making a lot of soup. But you paid $10 for butternut squash, and you go next week and it's $7 for butternut squash. You can't ask them for like a refund. Right. Or I can't bring that back to them and say, hey, you're selling it at 10, but I own it at 15. And I'll sell you this thing for 15. Right.
That's the gamble.
There's no like exchange. It is definitely a gamble. And it's like, sometimes, like back to what I was talking about earlier about resources, like sometimes like people are in these like mountainous ranges and totally out of cell service, and like they may miss the high of the month or something like that when they have a contract to fix. But that's kind of like how it goes. That's the name of the risky game, so to say. And with that case, it's like a lot of producers and exporters, they try their best to buffer the differentials a little bit, just because they know that they need X amount at a base level in order to do what they need to do. And they know that they may not get the highest fixation, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine a place like Brazil, there's obviously a little bit more of a cushion, because there's so many, in some places there's 4 harvest seasons, and then in comparison to a place like Guatemala.
Like
yeah, right. And then like in Guatemala or Nicaragua or Panama, there's only 1. So I would imagine that it's a lot more like higher stakes at play at that point.
Yeah, I mean they just have so much volume, really and truly. They have so much volume, and the C market, it's basically at its core, it was structured as supply and demand. Right. And so like if supply is up and demand is down, you see the market start to dip a little bit, because like there's a surplus of coffee, right? It's like there's too much, so it needs to get like discounted.
Right.
And then the flip side is like if there's no coffee and there's a ton of demand, the price goes up because it's less available, and that's people need coffee, and they're gonna have to pay a little bit more for it because there's just not enough of it. Right. That's kind of how like the ebb and flow of it goes. And so like Brazil kind of controls a lot of it. And it's like back to what I said about bar chart, and kind of like, really, I really can't encourage people to look into that enough, or maybe not necessarily bar chart, but any website that explains the ongoings of the market day to day. Brazil can have no rain like they're having right now, right? I think they've had like 74% of their historical rainfall year over year. And with that, there are worries about the future crop. And so because there's a worry about the future crop and that there'll be less coffee available on the market rallied a little bit, and went up. So it closed in the 250 world. Last week we saw a little bit of rain in Brazil after they've had a drought for a while. And we saw a slight dip in the market. So, in its core, it's really developed around this like supply and demand mentality. But it's not.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, at its core, it's designed to work around the supply and demand realm, but it's not always the case because there are, nowadays, and I guess there always have been, but nowadays more than not, there are these big Wall Street companies that are in there just kind of exploiting the volatility and making it a bit more difficult.
Yeah, that was the most interesting part of our conversation when we last spoke about this. I don't know if you're breaking any rules by going in a little bit deeper on that, but
no, I have no rules.
Yeah, that was it was pretty surprising to hear because when we had talked, I got finished reading probably a dozen different articles just talking about the deforestation regulation that got postponed by the European Union, got pushed back another year, which I think was pretty obvious. And also Brazil had like a good weekly report on the rainfall. So I would imagine at that point, the price of coffee was going to drop, but it almost just stayed exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it was surprising to see, and I didn't understand why, because I imagined, again, with Brazil making up almost, 50% of the total coffee production worldwide, 45% maybe. I would imagine that would have a much larger effect on the stock or the price of coffee.
Oh man, you would think. You would hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's really no. I wish I had like a deeper explanation of like why or what really like what's actually going on. But it's really like the same way you can go and buy was that GameStop? Remember you can buy GameStop stock a while ago?
Yeah.
Same way you can go and buy GameStop on like Robinhood, right? You can go and buy a coffee future. It costs a lot of money, but if you have enough money to make it happen, you can go and do it. And Wall Street is really like it's been involved for like a long time. Probably since the beginning, if I had to guess. But I mean, fact check me on that because I really don't know, and I don't want to speak too much out of turn. But they use it the same way as they use anything else, right? They look at the technical side of it. They look at, is it possible for us to make money here? Can we take people's 401ks and invest a little bit into coffee and will that get them a return? Can it get us, not Royal, but like, can it get like me as a Wall Street, company? Can it get me a good return at the end of the year? And at a certain level, it can, because at a certain level, you can buy up enough contracts to kind of offset the fundamentals of it, the supply and demand, and you can create like a false shortage, create a false surplus to make it go up or down, however you so choose. But that's why when Brazil got rain and it hadn't rained in a while, like you were saying, it's like you were reading their reports that it was positive. Things really didn't move. Nothing really changed. And we looked at it the same way you did. We're like, come on.
Right.
Some people believe, because like I said in the beginning, I have like a dual role, right? So like I work with producers all around the world, and I also work with roasters. And because we do that trade of contracts, like I said, we own these coffees at C plus that differential. That producer got paid, right? So they got their contract for $250. They have their differential that got paid out to them. So they're smooth sailing. They're all paid up. They're good. We own our coffee at that differential plus the C again, because we hedge it. That way, it stays at a fair price, and it's never, we don't never own anything at like $7 per pound and force people to pay $7 a pound or something like that. So when the market rallies, it is like, it doesn't help us at all, because we're looking at it like, oh man, I have this awesome Honduran natural coffee that we own in a differential, and like I know Jack's really gonna want it, but it's also like $5 a pound because I own it at a 250 differential, and the market's at 250 right now.
Mhm.
And so for this thing to be like at like a good price for Jack's company to use this in like wholesale, you're gonna need the market to come off at like 10-15 cents or something like that. That
Right.
way, he can buy it and he can make money himself, and kind of like keep the business going and support that contract and that customer.
Right. You're like good cop and bad cop at the same time, essentially.
I would hope that I'm good cop, good cop. I would hope because none of us here we don't gain anything at all. If the market goes up to $3, that coffee we still own it at 50 cents.
Right.
Right. So like we're not like making anything. In fact, we like lose if that market goes up that high because is owning coffee contracts and futures cost money, right? So it's like any other Wall Street thing. It's like you get beat up if it rallies too much. But yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like how you're saying hedging against potential future prices of coffee is almost like a common concept that's being adopted by more roasteries. At least I saw an article posted last week about that, just different ways that roasters could mitigate that large price increase.
Totally. And I mean, like there are other companies that do it as well. But like for us, like we operate in kind of a unique way, or what I believe to be a unique way. I mean, things like we talked about earlier, the industry changes every day, and I've heard others talk about it as well. But we operate in a way that allows us to have like these buckets, right? I heard this explained like not that long ago, and I thought it was a really good way of doing so. So like we own these contracts that we see as like buckets, right? So like the contract, like a standard futures contract, is 37,500 pounds, right? And we allow people to purchase coffee out on an outright price if they want. So if you call me and you say like, okay, and I'll use that 50 cent, 250 level, I said again, you say, okay, I want this Brazil and it's at $3 because 50-cent differential and market's at 250. It's like, okay, cool, no problem at all. And you need 10 of them, perfect. That gets put into a bucket, right, for us because we have that 37,500 pound level we're trying to hit. But if you were to call and say like, hey, I need like 20 bags of this coffee, and I have a market level in mind that I'm hoping to hit, it's like, cool, no problem at all. Here's this thing called first notice day, which is basically like the last day of that trading period that we would have to be able to fix this contract before the price goes up because of interest and a backwardation market, which we can get to later. We can say, okay, no problem at all. You have a market level in mind and a differential that's set. Perfect. I'm going to set it aside at C plus your differential. So it'll be at 0 because you're waiting for a market level. And that would be it. We just wait. Right. And then whenever you're ready, it's like, okay, cool. Like, you're good to fix your price. Right on. So we'll fix the price at 240. So now it's down 10 cents.
Right.
And you're good. But it allowed you to kind of secure your inventory a little bit sooner and not get too beat up with the price, which is what a lot of roasters really take advantage of nowadays. Just because, like I said, the industry changes all the time, and it's more readily available for people to do now.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's definitely unique to you guys as an importing company. I mean, you guys seem to have like a really good market in New Jersey, especially. It seems like a lot of roasters use you guys in the area, and it's the only you guys are the only importing company that I know that takes advantage of that concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's just helpful. It's just helpful for people, and I mean, I love doing it when roasters are ready. That's the thing too. It's like, as time progresses, the industry evolves a lot, and these ideas become more prominent, right? But like sometimes, you have this potential contract out there, this potential like wholesale customer out there as a roaster, right? And you may say, to your trader or to whomever, and say, okay, I think, extra emphasis on I think I need 5 containers of coffee, right? And I think I should have an answer within the next 2 months,
Right.
right? And like, cool, yeah, right on. Like, go after the business, and I'm happy to help you however I can. And we'll set aside 5 containers of coffee, no problem. But sometimes if it's like a real shot in the dark guess, it gets really tricky because like first notice day, and contract periods, they only last for so long. And really what we're hoping to do to keep things at like the best price level is to fix that contract before first notice day. And so if that, thought of, oh, I think this wholesale customer is gonna be ready in 2 months, like I'm holding on to that amount of coffee for 2 months, and now it's kind of like in this risky spot where it's aging a little bit, right? Because I would have gotten the coffee maybe like this month, and now I'm holding it for 2 months. And if that continues to get kicked down the road, now this coffee is continuing to age, and maybe that wholesale customer comes back and says, I think I'll take 5 bags, and you're like, okay, cool, no problem. And at which point, again, hell yeah, like you did it, like you sold 5 bags, like right on, let's do it. So I put back, a ton of coffee, but now it's been a couple of months. So now we have to work a little bit on this end to be like, okay, we need to prioritize these containers that we held onto for a few months because so-and-so thought, this was going to happen. So to be able to like manage things, we albeit it is like really offered to everybody and anybody that wants to do it. We really, really hope that we do a good job in explaining how things work prior to getting there. That way everybody is as informed as possible and can make the best decision, because maybe it's a better idea for you to take your 5 bags in the very beginning and feel things out and learn a little bit about how that wholesale customer is going to interact with you, or how their buying habits are going to work or operate.
Yeah.
And maybe you learn like, okay, yes, they'll go through 5 containers of coffee, but they're going to go through that in 5 years. So it's a container a year. So I can actually get fresh coffee once a year instead of booking 5 years worth of coffee today. And, we try really hard to really just work with anyone that calls us, to figure out like, is this the best way for you to go? Like, is this like the best route?
Yeah, just to give people like a concept of how large your container is, how many bags of coffee would you say fit in one container?
So it varies from country to country, and it depends on the bag weight itself. So Brazil, for instance, has the lightest. Brazil has some of the lightest bags, so they're 132 pounds. And Brazil exports that way, and most of Eastern Africa exports that way as well. Colombia has heavier bags. That's the heaviest of 154 pounds. And then most of Central America is like 152-ish. A typical Eastern African or a typical Brazilian coffee container will be about 320 bags. Colombian container or a container out of Central America will be like 275 bags.
So that's like 35,000 pounds of coffee.
It usually should equate to 37,500 roughly. Roughly. Sometimes pretty like suppliers will jam extra bags in there, and we may have a contract that exceeds that or is below that. But I would say 99.99% of the time it's 275 or 320, unless there's like some super exotic micro lot bag that they're putting in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like there's still a lot of questions that I want to ask you, but I don't want to go over the time because I don't want to keep you for too long.
Oh, please, whatever you want.
I guess what we could focus on, just to kind of bring it back a little bit, if somebody's just getting started within the industry, like they're a home roaster, they have like a 1 kilogram roasting machine, or even like an Akawa, what like, what would you say would be the best way to really start getting involved within the industry? I mean, I think personally, I'm more under the impression of just any experience is the best teacher, but what would you recommend for somebody that's really looking to take that step into the industry, whether they're a cafe owner or a roastery owner or even like an importer of coffee like yourself?
Definitely. I mean, support your friends, support companies you like, try out coffees. Like for me, when I was like just getting like started, like I worked with this guy who was like, he was the roaster for this company, and like, you know, he and I like talked a bunch about like music and stuff like that. But like when it came to like the actual like coffee itself, like I didn't get it. You know, I didn't understand it, and it's just because like I hadn't spent enough time like actually like being a part of things. Like I didn't spend enough time like exploring and being like curious, you know. And I think that like once that clicked, that like there was a lot that I had to learn, or like or that there was like a lot out there to like explore, then things totally changed. Because like I would go to the city and I would just go to every shop and I'd be like, oh, this place is so cool. Like, look at the branding of it. Look at how the people interact with one another. Look at how the cups are served. Look at, you know, the plates. Look at the bags. Look at, you know, how they describe the coffee and stuff like that. Right. And it's like, you go to enough of them and you start to get like this like base level knowledge of like, okay, cool. Like, you know, a lot of companies do X, Y, or Z. Like, okay, rad. Like that's a good thing to keep note of, because if I start a company, like I know that there's a lot of places that do like X, Y, or Z that I know I could do. As far as like figuring out like coffee itself and like its like profile and all that stuff, like honestly, I really and truly just went on. I mean, at the time, it was like Instagram was just getting started, so it wasn't a ton of that. Like, I would just like Google coffee roasters, and I would order. I swear to you, I would order bags, and I ended up in like my house at the time. I would end up with like, you know, 10 bags of coffee in my cabinet or something like that, from all different roasters from all over the place. And I would look at the note on the front of it, like, okay, cool. This is like an Ethiopian natural. Like it has notes that are described to be like jasmine, blueberry, and like strawberry. And I would drink it and I would think about it and just like really take the time to like really like explore and try to understand what was happening. And like over time, like as I was working in the roastery with that guy that I was talking about earlier, that like I just didn't get it. You know, like he would go home for work and I would be like packing like online orders or something like that. And like I would take these bags from home and I would like cup them blind. So I would like write down the notes on a notepad with numbers, and I would number the cups and I would put the bags away so I couldn't read anything. I'd shuffle everything up and then I would cup through it and try to match the numbers. And I would say, okay, cool. Like I think that this one's this one, this one's that, which gave me like a really good understanding of like even like roast profiles. Because like I would understand like, okay, a really light roast is always, I mean, not always, but most likely it's going to showcase in this way. Versus a really dark roast, it's always going to showcase this way, kind of. And you know, enough time went by where it's like, you know, I have a good understanding of how coffees cup and how to like evaluate them in a certain way. And then I also like gained a lot of understanding about how to like understand branding and like marketing of things by just going to coffee shops. So like if anyone is like just getting started, like I would definitely say just like, you know, look around. It's way easier now because now you can go on Instagram and you can find 160 roasters in like 5 minutes. But I mean, order a couple of bags, you know, see what happens when you brew it up. Try to see what the roaster was going for.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a second, but I think the part where you brought up about blind cupping, we actually do that with all of our samples that we get in, and I feel like it's the thing that I don't give enough credit to having such a large impact on being able to identify coffees and just have a general sense of coffees from different countries. It seems to be, I mean, when I look back on anything, probably next to taking any classes at Royal, it's like the one thing that just builds up your arsenal and like safe of coffee knowledge, and just develops your palate. It even just gives you the capacity to think about, paying attention and just being present when you're tasting other things during these different parts of your day, and you're able to like make the connection between those two flavor profiles. It's pretty interesting to see. But when you brought up the part about branding and marketing with your coffee company or your products, I think it is definitely easier because you could just go on Instagram and find all these different coffee companies. But I also think it's more difficult because now everyone can do that, especially the people that own their own coffee companies. So I would say, just to kind of add to your point of paying attention, and just really seeing what other companies are doing. I think too, you can also bring a lot of inspiration from different companies and different industries as well. Like you're talking about like skateboarding, like I even see a lot of like inspiration with coffee companies that kind of give credit to certain like skate brands. There's a lot of similarities there. It's pretty interesting to see.
Definitely. It really goes back to like, as far as like standing out on like social media or something like that with your branding. It's like, again, just finding that like problem that you see and like identifying a solution, and then like that's your brand. Your brand is like your solution. So if your like problem is like the coffee industry is no fun, which like it's a ton of fun, but like let's just say it wasn't, then you would just say like, okay, cool, like I think that this industry is like really like not that fun, and I want to have a really loud brand. Like I want all my colors to be really bright and like tie-dye or whatever, and all my captions are in all caps, and I explain things in like a really like cool, fun way. It's like you can do that totally, and you can totally stand out. I think like the thing that's happening on social media right now is like, to your point about everybody being able to do it, and maybe me saying like go to coffee shops and find out what X, Y, and Z is, the common thread. Maybe that's like not sound advice, but it's like you can go online, you can see 100 companies, and sometimes it's like really easy to just replicate what you've seen 100 times. Yeah. But it like the really like special companies find like these really cool ways to just like really, to your point, just look around and just like provide something totally unique.
Yeah. Well, I think you get inspiration from anything, whether it's a coffee shop or a completely different industry altogether. So I think your point makes a lot of sense too. I think branding in general is just getting deeper involved within how can you reflect yourself and your personality, and just sort of do that in a way where it's like you are the company, right? And like how do you display your preferences or things that you find interesting well enough? I think you can find that anywhere, even if it's another coffee shop, it's the one down the street. Okay, all right, one or two more depending on how long these questions go. Do you guys have any partnerships coming up with any farms that you'd be comfortable with talking about? I know that it's different for certain importing companies, but as far as just choosing farms that you want to work with, I guess, how does that? Yeah,
every day. We have so many like deep-rooted partnerships with the farms we work with already. And we take calls every day, and I hate to say this where everybody will hear, but I'm happy to cup whatever samples come through all the time, because it's like like we'll get samples sometimes from a supplier in like Uganda, right? Like we'll just get like a random box in the mail, and it'll be like Ugandan coffee, and it'll be this new like farm or exporter or something like that we've never heard of. Like who knows where they are, but we'll cup the coffee, there'll be some contact information, and it's like, okay, cool, like this suits our needs, like let's try to learn a little bit more about it. Like who are they? Do they know how to export coffee? Is this their first time? Like how involved are we going to have to get, right? But partnership wise, I mean, like, because we've had so many like deep rooted relationships that have like grown over the years, it's like we we yeah, I mean, we have stuff coming in from all of, I mean, I would call them our friends all the time. I know we're gonna have an event coming up soon, but because I know like virtually no information on it at the moment, I can't say exactly when or who,
Mm.
just because I don't know like what the deal is. But um, we're trying to get back on board with doing like more events here as far as like cuppings go and stuff like that. And I mean, like, if you work with us, then I mean, anytime you're ever in the area, like, we welcome anybody in here that is currently working with us. Just like, come on in, say what's up, have a coffee, we can talk about it, and that's all good. And that kind of like puts our relationships or partnerships like out there for anybody to ask, because every coffee we bring in, is like a different partnership or relationship in some way. We
Mhm.
also we do trips all the time. Like, we have a trip to Ethiopia coming up, probably in December, and then after that, it'll probably be a trip to Colombia in February.
Mm.
And we offer, that offer is out there for anybody that wants to go at any point. That again works with us currently, or is currently buying from us in some capacity. It's like that invitation is out there, open, whomever wants to go, as long as there's like a reason for you to go, then cool. Like, hop on board. You can meet whoever we're going to see, and get the full experience, which is a lot of fun.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's a great way for like any like roaster to like put like, you know, again, I have a unique spin or unique like feeling for their products or whatever. It's like, when you have a relationship with the people that are manufacturing or growing or producing something, it's like the coffee world is a bit different. Like, we're not going to some like big factory somewhere. Like, you're going to somebody's home a lot of times. So you get like a really unique, really like genuine side of them, and you really form a relationship that like you remember over a long period of time, which like is cool, because I mean, you have your partnership. Like, you'll leave with their phone number a lot of times, and if you guys can text and be like, hey, what's going on in Guatemala right now? Like, I heard Antigua is having a giant party. Are you there? And you'll get a photo back. Like, yeah, man, it's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
But
That's
as far as Royal goes, like,
yeah.
I mean, we have like really deep rooted partnerships with people we work with, and we're trying to do more events that kind of like surround that, and kind of like put more like light on it. It's just getting the pieces together is kind of hard sometimes, especially like in this time of year, because for Central America, for instance, it's like harvest season is coming up, and so like we can't call somebody in Guatemala and be like, hey, like, come on up, like, does December work for you? It's like, no, it's the middle of harvest season and the holidays, so we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll end there.